Hello, greetings, good morning, good day, and thank you for joining me on this week's edition of So Called Friday. We've been on a journey with Cheryl, whose story begins at age 9, and then we find out that it actually began a little earlier as we went through. So we left off working with Cheryl on getting to understand what made her so inquisitive about sex and what made her mom so indifferent to what was going on. And then we went through a lot. There's been a lot of twists and turns, but I believe that in this particular episode, we might get closure. That could happen. All right, let's keep our prayers going. So we left off talking about what what happened prior to 9. That was essentially what we were working on. So prior to 9, I asked you about your relationship with your mom, and I asked you, uh, was she accustomed to just being indifferent to your suffering, or just indifferent to you overall? And because I wanted you to tell me about our relationship, so let's pick up there. Prior to 9, prior to this ordeal, how did your mother relate to you or interact with you?
Well, to be honest, I only have two memories of my mom before that time. One of them, we were at some party, outdoor party, picnic, something, and I reached for her hand to hold her hand, and she had a cigarette in that hand, and I didn't realize it, and it burned me between my fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of getting sympathy, I was basically, well, that's what you get for reaching without looking
Mm.
type of
So you were
response.
scolded.
Yes. And so I don't know whether, she was not a touchy feely person and didn't want me holding on to her. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what that was. I just remember being hurt that I didn't get some kind of sympathy for the fact that I had cigarette burns between my fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my sister was born, I guess I was 7. My mom and I named her together, which
Mm-hmm.
was cool, from the old Tammy movies that we used to watch, Tammy and the Bachelor and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. Um, and I remember the night she brought her home. We were staying with my aunt, and brought the baby home after giving birth, and that's really the only two memories I have before all this started at 9. And
So I want to get this straight. You don't have a memory of dinner. You don't have a memory of her cooking dinner. You don't have a memory of her putting you to bed, helping you with homework. None of that.
none
So
of it.
in your historical mind, your mother virtually didn't exist. Okay. But yet something had to happen. She had to feed you or
Mhm.
whatever. So what I'm still trying to get at what she did that was so devastating that you just completely erased her existence in your mind, except for traumatic or pivotal moments.
I don't know unless they were all traumatic and I just blocked them out because I don't recall ever having a relationship with my mother as a mother and daughter or even as just two people before then.
That's a very interesting thing, boy. I'll tell you right now, I'm not a social anything like that. I am just really sharing and giving you an opportunity to share. But I think that that has to be dealt with. And my strongest recommendation would be that you take steps to open up those memories, because something happened that made her insignificant to you and you insignificant to her. Now, I want to get back to how you talked about your mom didn't believe you. All right. And I want you to share with us what you shared with us in the break during our time apart about your grandmother.
Ah, well, I just said to my grandmother, used to tell people, I used to spend a lot of time with my grandmother, probably more than I ever did with my parents when I was
Hmm.
young. And went to church with my grandmother. She was my Sunday school teacher when I was in junior high and all of that. But my grandmother told people that I used to make up these really cute little stories about all the things my little brother did. Well, I never had a little brother at that time.
Hmm.
Um, I don't remember the stories, but evidently they were quite fascinating because people would hear these stories and, come back to my grandmother and say, Cheryl just told me about, her little brother doing this and doing that. I didn't know she had a brother. And my grandmother would say she doesn't.
Hmm. So with your, let's go back. So if that's the case, then is it plausible that your mother didn't believe you because you were prone to those imaginary stories?
It's possible. I don't remember ever telling her any, but I'm sure I probably did.
Hmm.
I think whatever was going on in my life, I was so unhappy with it that I made up my own life
Yeah, it sounds like that.
because whatever I made up in my head was a whole lot better than what I was living.
Hmm. But you don't know what you were living.
Yeah. I don't, yeah, I blocked out what I was living, but then I've also blocked out the stories. So I have no
Hmm.
clue what I was telling people, but obviously they thought it was pretty cool.
Hmm. And it made you accept it. You
Yes.
weren't ignored. Because it's really difficult. I think those of you who are watching me right now, you all would have to have a whole lot of speculations as well. It's difficult for a child to not remember dinner, not remember eating dinner with my parent, not remember dinner being prepared, not remembering holidays or birthdays. I mean, did she just ignore those as well?
I don't think so, but I don't remember any of them.
Hmm.
She was a waitress in a fast food joint, and I do remember now that I think about it that uh, I went to work with her several times because my parents worked opposite shifts, and so I remember being at the fast food restaurant with her several times and helping out, helping hand out the orders and making my own little drinks and making root beer floats with
Hmm.
chocolate ice cream because that's what kids do.
Hmm.
Um, so I remember her taking me to work with her and letting me help, but I don't remember anything at home. I don't remember meals. I don't remember being tucked into bed at night. I don't
Well,
remember
who was your
anything.
babysitter when she was working?
Um,
Who babysat you?
well, when I wasn't with her at work, I was either with my grandmother or I guess I spent some time with my dad too because my dad and I were pretty close, but I don't remember a lot of that either before then. So I think most of my memories of my life were at my grandmother's.
Hmm. And you don't remember a lot of that.
I remember my grandmother and my great grandmother and I in the house. I remember things like her fireplace that I was scared of because it was a gas fireplace and it was strange to me.
Hmm.
I'd never
And it
seen
made
anything
a
like
lot of
that before.
made noise. Whoosh.
Yeah. And they lit it with matches, and I was always afraid of matches.
Hmm.
So, and I don't know what that was about either. But I remember that. I remember eating C's candy with my great grandmother and
Hmm.
orange slices and things.
So it's your mother who is that mysterious, enigmatic figure that you didn't connect to.
Yes.
We only have a little more time, but I want to get into it with your sisters. Let's talk about your sisters. You had two sisters.
I have actually a full sister, a half sister, and a half brother.
Okay. So you finally got that brother.
Yes, I did. But my mom was already living in Oregon when he was
Hmm.
born, so I never
Got to
met
know him.
him or my half sister until my senior year of high school.
Okay, so let's talk about you and Tammy,
Mhm,
your full sister.
mhm.
How was your relationship? Do you remember anything about interacting with Tammy?
Yes, I remember. I remember helping take care of her. Most of the time when I came home from school, we had a lady who lived next door in the apartment next door to us that watched both of us, watched Tammy full time and me after school till my mom got home. And I remember being over there with them. I remember being proud of my sister and loving my sister
Mm-hmm.
and thought she was just the coolest thing. It was like I guess like a real live dolly or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But I remember being a little bit jealous of her because it seemed like my mom cared more about her than she did me. But I just attributed to the fact that that's usually how it is with new babies
Mm-hmm.
because they need all the attention.
Mm-hmm.
I never really stopped to think about the fact that my mom really had a connection with my sister that she never had with me.
So okay. So as we get near the end of this, would you say that did your mother ever go to school for you? Did she ever have to meet the principal, take you to school, anything like that?
I don't ever remember any of that. My dad, I remember my dad going to a few PTA meetings after I went to live with him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember either of my parents having any interactions with me at school or with my teachers before that.
That is a very this is curious. It's almost like, and I'm just throwing this out here, not because it's real. Do not go and think I'm making a conclusion, but it's almost as if you were snatched from someone else. You don't have a life, a memory of your your childhood. That's either it was a very horrible childhood, you fell and hurt your head and had amnesia or something, you know. But there has to be a reason for this, and the fact that you only remember the painful things your mom did, but you don't remember her being a mom. I mean, kids remember, well, we had hot dogs on Fridays, we had pizza on Saturdays. Kids remember that, or my mom helped me do my homework. And clearly, it doesn't seem like you stayed with your grandmother all that much. So I would like to know, what is it that she did that caused you to wipe her out of your mind and your existence like that?
I actually was with my grandmother almost all the time when I was young.
So
I
you
do
didn't live
remember
with
that.
your mom.
I mean, I did live with her, but I guess my grandmother took care of me for the
What?
first few years after school and before school.
Hmm.
Before I started school, I was with grandma all the time.
So your mother wasn't in your life,
She
and you start
was
school what,
working.
about 5 or 6?
I think I was 5 when I started. Yes,
Hmm.
just before my 5th birthday when I started kindergarten.
Hmm.
I have a September birthday, and school starts in September in California, so they
Do
all
you
tie
remember
together.
kindergarten?
I remember one day of it.
And then after that, okay. So you really are a person that could be prone to absent-mindedness because you just toss information away. You just, if it didn't please you.
Yeah.
So you obviously, I'm just assuming, I won't say obvious because that's um, too emphatic, but you clearly made it a habit of escaping into your fantasy stories.
Yeah, I think that's why I started writing at 9 years old too,
Hmm.
writing poetry and prose and stuff, is because I had uh, a whole different life that I lived in my head
Hmm.
that had nothing to do with whatever my real life was.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, at least we got a piece of. Hey, listen, guys. Listen, we got a little bit of closure, just a little bit. A couple of cracks in the door, creaks and hinges, which is, to me, a great step. But it'd be interesting to hear what your feedback is on this episode or these last 3 episodes with Cheryl. And I'm sure Cheryl would love to hear how things are, how you are also being touched and affected by her testimony. I think that there's somebody out there who has the technical term or the analytical or diagnostic term for what Cheryl has gone through as a youngster, and her complete inability to tap into her mom, or and her mom's inability to tap into you. And one of the things, and kids will retreat into their memories if their home life leaves them alone. You will develop this imaginary friend. You will have other hobbies and other activities that you do. You will invent entertainment and recreation and escape. And it seems like that's what you did. I'm going to say something that that I don't know pertains to Cheryl, but I do know it pertains to a lot of moms. And a lot often it's how your mom conceives you and what was going on in her life determines how she receives you. Now that's a very interesting thing. I've interviewed a lot of people over 40 years, and I have found out that that kid that's ignored or the one that's celebrated, whatever the extreme is, it has to do with how the mom conceived you. um, okay, I'm broke. Maybe I was raped. Maybe I was sick. Maybe I was left out in the cold. Maybe, and on and on and on. So it's not, this is not, I'm not making a judgment call on what you're saying, but I'm saying that my experience has taught me that however moms conceive you is how they receive you. And so if she was in a turbulent moment, or if you were a victim of a pregnancy, of an assault or anything like that, then she would act as if you didn't exist, because in her mind that ordeal didn't happen. I'm theorizing. This is not facts. Don't be writing me talking about I gave you facts. I did not. Because it sounds to me that however way she conceived you, it sounds to me that however way she conceived you, it was not under the pleasant, warm, fuzzy, romantic moment circumstances. And it was as sterile, her conception was as sterile as she handles you as her child. Very sterile. Um, I think that that's the closest that I can get. I've seen this on several occasions over the years of parents, and then later on they'll say, "Yeah, well, because people don't tell you the truth, and sometimes they blank it out." All right, but I think it has to do with however way she conceived you. What was going on between you, her, and your dad, and however that happened. I've had women who were all packed to leave the marriage end up having one more fling and get pregnant and can't get out of it. Those kinds of things really do happen. Cheryl, I thank you for taking time. You have definitely been good for me. And I pray that this was useful to you. Did you find it somewhat useful?
I did. Realized that all the stuff that I've blocked out, there's got to be a good reason for it, and I need to get to the root of it to be
Hmm.
able to let it go.
And I'm praying, I'm touching and agreeing with you that God is going to keep hammering at this thing until he can get to the root of truth, because souls cannot be free without truth. That just can't happen. Whether it doesn't have to be Bible truth as we quoted, or anything like religious truth, but or spiritual truth. It just has to be the truth that made sense to your soul. So until next time, which at which point I'm sure we're gonna have a lot to discuss. Thank you so much for joining me today on Soul Call Friday. Hey, you all share this. Share it again and again with everyone. Share it everywhere you can, because this is helpful. I'm sure that there are a lot of you out there who can relate to Cheryl, and there are others who can probably help her. So don't forget, let us know. Write us, inbox us, and let us know what's going on. Until then, God bless you. Have a great weekend. And remember, everybody has a soul. See you next time. God bless.